Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you filming?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, good morning. My name's Colin and I lead forage walks for wild food foraging. In particular mushroom foraging. That's my favourite, that's my passion. But we're not really in a mushroom season or much of a mushroom season at the moment, so we're having a look at spring greens. So I do forage walks all over the place, but what I'm doing at the moment is focusing on where I live, which is Great Lever, because there's some fantastic foraging to be done right on our doorstep. We're in the middle of lockdown. We've all got, you know, sort of controlling measures on what we're allowed to do and what we're allowed to do when we go out and stuff, and how long we're allowed to go out for. So everybody's having a little walk right near the houses right now. So people round here in this area, it'd be really good if you could kind of just identify or know how to identify a few really interesting things that grow all over the place on our doorstep in Great Lever. So I brought with me a bit of equipment. I brought with me Jeannette.
Hi.
Jeannette from the college. Go on, introduce yourself to that.
I'm Jeannette Fowler. I work for Bolton College. I'm part of the community regeneration team. And Colin's going to take us on a walk, and hopefully we're going to learn more about foraging.
Yeah. So we are on the old railway line. This used to be the Bolton to Walton railway line, and you can get all the way to Walton there. I've cycled that way. It's a good route. But it's a great little walk from Great Lever in towards town, towards Double basically. So I brought a bit of equipment with me. I brought a basket for collecting our finds, our things that we find, and I brought a couple of foraging staffs. So these are foraging staff. This is mine. Really handy thing because I can kind of turn leaves over and have a look at them without having to bend down and pick them up. I can reach up into trees and grab things and what have you. But it doubles up at the moment in this time of crisis as a social distancing staff. We've got to keep this distance apart. So this one's yours. Now, one of the really important things for all this virus control crisis that we're in the middle of at the moment is the social distancing, so we'll keep that, and touching things. Normally when I go on a forage walk, I'd hand your staffs out and I'd touch it and then you'd touch it, and then I'd pass the basket round and we'd all take turns in carrying it. But we've got to be dead careful about what we touch. We don't want to be touching loads of things. I might even pick things up like plants and identify them and pass them to you, but what I'm going to do this time, Jeannette, is whatever I pick, if I want you to pick it, you've got to pick your own, so we're not all touching the same things. So before I give you your social distancing foraging stuff, I'm going to give it a little anti-back wipe. You grab that. So that was safe. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to walk in that direction towards the hospital, but before we go anywhere, let's have a look here. Come on. Have a look at the stuff. So, I've got loads of stuff. And the real obvious thing that we see absolutely everywhere wherever you go, especially in urban places, is nettles. Right, so I don't know if you know about nettles. I mean, it's a dead common foraging thing. People talk about nettles and nettle foraging. A lot of people know these days that nettles are really good for you. They're really good sort of superfood. There's loads and loads of nutrients in them. So first of all, we've got to handle them without stinging ourselves too much. So if I grip that and pull, and what I've done is a nettle is full of tiny little hairs. All the stem and all the leaves are covered in little hairs, and if I go brushing them against my skin, those hairs stick in and that's what stings you. They're quite fragile though, so if I just grip the hair like that, it doesn't sting. So I've just destroyed all the stings on that leaf. That leaf won't sting anymore. I can do that all over. The bit I'm really interested in though, if I want something for my salads or for me, not for my salad, but for my soup, for making soups out of, is the nettle tip. That's the succulent bit, that's a bit softer and a bit tastier. So what I would normally do on a forage, is I'd squeeze it up like that, destroy all the hairs, pop it in my mouth and eat it just to show everybody. I'm not going to do that though, because I've been touching stuff, and now I've been touching that and then I put it in my mouth, and I don't want COVID-19, so and I don't want to spread it. So what I could do is collect a load of them if I wanted. So we're just picking like that. Takes absolutely ages. If we stand here collecting these, someone's joining in over there. If we stand here collecting enough of these for the soup, it'll take us absolutely ages. So I'm not going to collect these, but it's really good to know about. I might come back and collect some of them, but that's how you do it. give it a
Can
go.
you use the rest of the nettle for making soup as well?
You can. The only thing with the rest of it is, as they get a bit bigger like this, they become a bit tougher.
Yeah.
So they're not as succulent. A bit later in the season, you can see some of them forming already. We get these little seed pods, and these sort of dangle down all over the nettle. And they are a really, really strong sort of source of the nutrient, really compact, all the nutrients compact in there. And if you get these seed pods, you've still got to crush all the seeds, all the stings. If you get the seed pods and pop it in your mouth, it kind of gives you a boost, like an energy boost, a noticeable energy boost, like having a cup of coffee. You know, so I've been out on forages with like groups of kids, and the kids have been sort of, you know, getting a bit tired towards the end of the forage, and you show them that, and they all have fun. The next minute they're all off again, like a little boost that they've all had. So yeah, nettle tips are the thing to get at the beginning of spring when they're little. You can just pick the whole thing, but you know, for a bit later on like this.
So the young nettles, you can make into soup.
The whole thing, yeah, you can make it.
But when they're more mature,
yeah, they're not. I mean, you can use it all if you want. It's absolutely fine. It cooks like spinach, and it wilts down like spinach. So I need a lot to make a poundful. So I need to spend a good bit of time. Now, if you're spending a good bit of time around nettles, you will get stung. No matter what I say about avoiding stings, you will get stung. Don't worry, nettle stings are fine. They're actually good for you. So a nettle sting causes you to have an immune response, which helps your immune system. It helps to kind of boost your immune system. It helps to sort of kickstart it and keep it in tip-top shape and all that sort of stuff. And it's supposedly a few nettle stings in spring are supposed to be good for your hay fever during the summer.
wow.
It's an old thing called urtication. Okay, and it's a good word, that urtication. It's easy to remember because if you get some nettle stings, you go, ah, it hurts. It's urtication. So don't worry about nettle stings. It doesn't bother me at all. It really, and the more nettle stings you get, the less hurt you feel from them. Yeah. So the more you forage, the more you get used to it. So that's nettles. In amongst these nettles are these. Have you ever noticed these before?
No,
They kind of stick to you. Can you see they're kind of sticking to my hand a bit? They've got like a sticky surface. Put your hand out. Oh, I've touched them all now. Let me get some that I've not touched. There. So if you put your hand out there and I brush that against your hand, did you feel that stickiness?
Yeah.
One of the names for them, depending on what group of foragers I'm with. If I'm with a group of kids, I don't give them this name. But if I'm with a group of adults, I give them the funny name, which is Sticky Willy. Which is one of its proper names. Cleavers is what they're actually called. And cleavers, yeah, cleavers again a superfood type thing. You can eat them as a salad leaf, but they're a bit better. What you can do is you can get a juicer, if you get a juicer, or if you just get a big massive handful of them, especially after it's rained, so they're all nice and juicy, and just twist them up and just squeeze out the juice, and you get this green juice out of it, and it's really super good for you. This green stuff that you can get from them. So that's cleavers. So we've got nettles, we've got cleavers, we've got dot leaves. Can you see these dot leaves here?
Yeah. But they're good for nettle stings.
Coming with this camera. Yeah. Everybody thinks dot leaves are good for nettle stings. They are. They're not the best thing, but they are okay. They do have a better thing. But what people tend to do with dot leaves for nettle stings is kind of crush the leaf up, get the juices going, and then rub it on. Actually, if you get right down to the bottom, can you see the stem bottom there? There's a lot more moisture in the stem bottom, and if I crush that up a bit, you might even see my hand. Can you see all this moisture on my fingers, this sticky stuff? And that's the stuff you want for the nettle stings. Yep. It's actually, as well, this bottom bit is quite tasty, and you can put that in salads, or you can cook it, or whatever, a bit like, you know, cook it as if you're cooking asparagus, that sort of thing. So that's another thing, dot leaves.
Wow.
There's all sorts, isn't there? And we've not even moved anywhere yet. Let's have a little walk this way and just see what else we see. Here we go. Have a look at this. Have you ever, do you know this plant at all? Have you ever heard of it? It's called ground elder.
No.
Gardeners know about ground elder because if you get it in your garden it's a pain. because it's really invasive and it just grows through your garden. So you top up ground elder. Anybody who's a gardener in the group goes, oh yeah, I'm always trying to get rid of that. I'm always chucking it away. Well, when they're trying to get rid of it, don't just chuck it away, chuck it in your salad because it's tasty. Again, earlier in spring when they're smaller is when they're at the tastiest. Yeah, they get a bit tougher later in spring. But ground elder is a nice edible. And it's called ground elder because the leaves, if you know an elder tree, it looks like an elder tree leaf. But it grows on the ground. No relation to elder at all, it's just happen chance that it looks like an elder leaf. But ground elder is a good one. One of the things that I've got on my radar for a habitat like this, see you've got the trees, but not that many trees. You've got this sort of scrubby ground with all sorts of wild stuff growing on it. In spring is a St. George's mushroom. And St. George's mushrooms are all white. They look like a button mushroom. They start off quite small, but they can grow fairly big. Just like a button mushroom, but they've got white underneath, white gills. So white cap, white gills, white stem, which is also the description of some deadly species, like the destroying angel or the death cap. They're white and white gills and stuff. But if we could find some, I could point out the features to you which absolutely identify it. So, you know, they're quite a safe one, especially at this time of year, because those deadly ones don't grow till autumn, generally. So keep that on your radar as we're having a walk round. I'm going to pause the video now, because we're going to walk down to the river and have a little look in the river area at stuff we can find there.
Yeah, I'm recording.
You're recording. So we're just down on the path that goes through to the hospital. So from the railway through to the hospital. We're going to come off the path here and have a look down by the river. We'll come this way. So many things growing down here. Fantastic things. Right, make your way over here if you can. Right, so we've just suddenly got a slightly different, we're alright here, we've suddenly got a slightly different habitat here because we've got the river going through. And it can seem a little bit scruffy, these sort of places sometimes, because people dump litter and stuff like that. But it's incredibly rich in variety of plants, really interesting variety of plants. There's loads of edible stuff, and there's some really, really not edible stuff. So, just have a look at this. This big thing here. I'm just going to see if I can pick a decent one. I'm just going to pick that. Picking plants in terms of the law and like what you're supposed to do with picking plants and stuff. What wildflowers, we don't want to just go around picking loads of wildflowers. The problem with picking a flower is you pick it, it's dead, it's not going to come again. It's not like mushrooms. If you pick a mushroom, it carries on living, the organism's under the ground, it's fine. Pick a plant, especially if you dig its root out, it's gone, isn't it? So we're just got to be a bit mindful of that. I've just pulled a stem off part of this, so it's absolutely fine. We are allowed to forage stuff by law, as long as you've got permission off the landowner, which is kind of council land here. But anyway, back to this one. Just have a look at that. What do you reckon that looks like? What could that be mistaken?
It looks like I'd say parsley.
Parsley, yeah. So
Yeah.
this is one of the most common causes of poisoning out there, because people misidentify it as either parsley or celery. So you can see how it looks like a little bit similar to either of those, parsley or similar, or celery. This is, so there's different types of hemlock plants, and you know hemlock's poisonous, like deadly poisonous. This is called water droplet hemlock. It grows by rivers like this. It's endemic throughout Bolton. It grows down by the Earl in Moses Gate, places like that. It's deadly poisonous, proper deadly poisonous. You can't even put it in your mouth just to have a taste to see what it tastes like and then spit it out again, because it's the sap that poisons. It's got alkalines in the sap. get into your saliva and poison you that way. It used to be used as a method of capital punishment in some places in the world. So one of the places is Sardinia. So in Sardinia, they would dish that out as capital punishment. People would have to drink some of that to kill them if they've been criminal or whatever, you know. And the way that it affects you is it draws all your muscles back really, really, really tight and causes these massive muscle spasms, which would be really, really painful. But because it's drawing all your muscles back so tight, you die with this crazy, tight, sort of mad grin on your face, which is where the phrase sardonic grin comes from, because it's Sardinia. And it's a sardonic grin, so it's not a sarcastic grin. It sounds like a sarcastic grin, and it's a sardonic grin, but a sardonic grin. And in Sardinia, they used to have these wooden death masks that people would wear for like ritual purposes and stuff, with those massive sardonic grins on that are supposed to represent death. And here it is, a great lever. So definitely one to watch out for. Yeah. Whew, nasty stuff. If you have a look, I'll have a look. Just a bit behind you, just if we just walk back a bit and then I'm not coming too close. Oh, in fact, there's some over here, we'll step up where we are. So just next to the camera there, you can see that on the camera, is all this stuff here. Can you see this? And this is hemlock, so not water droplet hemlock, but hemlock. So we have these flower heads that have got multiple little tiny flowers on them. A slender stem, quite a tough slender stem. The leaves are quite sort of feathery. And where the stems join together like there, can you see that purple bit? That's a real identifier for hemlock. Because there are a few things that are edible that look like it, but unless you really know what you're doing, I'd just totally avoid that whole family. Because that's the most deadly of all the plant families that we've got, that we're going to be looking at. Mad stuff. But, next to it, have a look down here. Can you see that stuff there? Can you see them leaves?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which leaves?
These leaves here. Looks a bit like an ash tree, in a way, in a funny way. Valerian. Valerian. Yeah? You've heard of valerian, haven't you? So with that stuff, what you've got to do with the valerian is you've got to dig the roots out. So you do destroy the plants. You've got to very, very, you've got to be very selective and you know, kind when you're harvesting it. You don't just take it all. And you get the roots and you make a tincture out of the roots, and it helps you to sleep, or it gives you a boost depending on how much you have, what quantity you have. Yeah, valerian, really instant plant valerian. It's really, really powerful valerian. People use it to go to sleep. If you ever get valerian tablets that are supposed to help you sleep, if you look at the dosage on the tablet, then it'll tell you how many tablets and how often to take them. And sometimes people go, well, I took it and it didn't work, so I doubled the dosage. And the problem with valerian is if you have too much, it acts in the opposite way and it wakes you up. So never have too high a dose of valerian because it acts as a stimulant.
Right. I've had valerian tea.
Yeah.
So you can get sleep.
Yeah,
Sleep while you sleep. Yeah.
Look at this. We're not social distancing. Get back. Sorry. Okay. No, there's loads of it. This water droplet hemlock is all over the place, isn't it? There's loads and loads and loads. It's a bit mad because when we do the mushroom foraging, if we was to find a deadly mushroom, people are always a bit offended, like, oh, what if the children eat it? Well, there's deadly plants everywhere you go. I mean, you know, really common plant that we put for decorative purposes all over the place is daffodil. And daffodils, if you eat daffodil bulbs, you know, it's really badly poisonous. Bluebells are poisonous, you know, so there's loads and loads of poisonous stuff out here. We've just got to know what it is and what it does, and then we can know whether or not to use it, to leave it.
Oh, excuse me.
Let's just have a, just next to you, Ruby, with the
Got
camera.
allergies.
Just next to Ruby with the cat. I can't come close to the camera, by the way, because Ruby's filming, but she lives in the same house as me. Is this stuff here? Can you see all this stuff? These leaves. What do they look like? What sort of leaves do they look like?
They look like dot leaves
They do?
to me.
Yeah, it's the same family as dot. Yeah. It's called bistort. So this stuff is bistort. It's a bit more recognisable when it gets its flower heads. These are the flower heads forming. There you go, that's one. So you may have seen that before.
Oh yeah.
You've seen them before, it's called bistort.
Yeah.
So that flower head comes from these leaves down here. And bistort.
I'm so sorry.
Yep.
Can't see it.
Can you not see it? Is it not?
Put it against the leaf.
So that's
There we go.
Bistart. Bistart has got a real traditional role in Lancashire that kind of people have forgotten about. And in some Lancashire villages it still happens that there's a bit of a cooking competition at Easter. And what you do is you make Easter ledges pudding. And Easter ledges pudding is made from Bistart. And what you do is you kind of wrap it in a bowl with loads of other stuff and grains and stuff like that, and you boil it, and it makes these sort of, it's almost like a vegetable dumpling. Bit of a mad sort of thing, nothing like anything else you'd normally have. And it's called Easter ledges pudding. And that's Bistart.
What's it called? It's Easter?
Easter ledges pudding.
Oh.
That cuckoo you can hear. It's a bit of a wrong season for cookies, isn't it? It's my phone ringing. I'll just cancel it. My mum. Yeah, so Bistart. All these things that you can know about.
What else can you use it for?
That's about, I mean, that's all I know. Is just you can use it as a salad leaf, or you can cook a bit of an Easter ledges pudding with it. As a salad leaf, as same as a lot of the things we've looked at so far, we're getting a bit late in season now. They're getting a bit tough. So it's when they first pop up is it's better as a salad leaf.
Is that about March?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say what calendar month it's going to be because spring happens when it happens. It doesn't follow the calendar, does it? You know, sometimes it happens in February. You know, it depends on the weather conditions and all that sort of stuff and the temperatures. But yeah, all of the spring greens are at their most succulent at the very, very start of spring. There are some things to look for a bit later on, like the hogweeds. So if you look over here at the hogweeds,
I'm gonna go down here.
So have you heard of hogweed? Have you heard of hogweed?
Yeah, I've heard hogweed, but I've always thought it's quite, you've got to be very careful with it.
Yeah.
You know, it can there's some children down at Moses Gate who are playing with it.
Yeah.
And like using it as swords, and
Yes.
then they ended up in hospital basically.
Yeah.
And they couldn't wait in the sun after and stuff like that.
No, it's a bizarre thing. That's giant hogweed. So
Giant
hogweed grows. Yeah. So giant hogweed. It's a beautiful plant. It's possibly one of my favourites, even though it's so like invasive. We need to get rid of it. Grows really tall, has these beautiful flower heads on it. It was imported by the Victorians as an ornamental for gardens and stuff. Grows down by the rivers in big posh Victorian gardens, landscapes and stuff. It just took over, it invades, it just carries on growing. Really hard to get rid of, and forms these really thick, chunky stems that are like sticks. So those kids chop some of the stems and they were beating each other with it, using it as like lightsabers or swords or whatever, you know. And the sap is photoreactive. So what happens is the sap goes on your skin, and actually on a cloudy day like today, it might not harm you. As soon as the sun comes out, that sap becomes photoreactive and it causes burns. It causes a chemical reaction and it burns your skin. And if you Google giant hogweed farmless, that's all you have to Google, giant hogweed farmless, you'll get the Bolton news article with pictures of those kids, and the backs and their arms and the chest are covered in burns, and they're really severe. It looks like somebody's poured a deep fat fryer over them. That's how bad it was. And you're talking life-changing injuries, you know, real life-changing injuries, because they don't just heal. What happens is that area of skin becomes permanently photoreactive. So they'll always have to cover up in the sunshine now. They can never go out in the sun for the rest of their lives. I know. It's really severe stuff. And people kind of go, why don't we know about it? Well, the information's out there. The information is out there. Chances are, on most of the days of the year that those kids chose to do that, it wouldn't have affected them, but they've just gone out on a sunny day with no t-shirts on. Do you know what I mean? And all that's happened. So that's giant hogweed. This is common hogweed. So common hogweed is a lot smaller. So when I said avoid the hemlock family, it is part of the hemlock family, but quite easy to identify as not hemlock, because those leaves don't look anything like the parsley one, you know, the water droplet hemlock. They don't look anything like the feathery leaves of the hemlock. They're quite easy to identify. They do look similar to the giant hogweed, but it's dead easy to identify the difference between this and giant hogweed. So one is the leaf itself is much more spiky on giant hogweed, and secondly is, all right, at the very beginning of spring they're both small plants and they both might look a similar size, but not for long. Giant hogweed's soon big, and you get these. So if this were giant hogweed, it would be a tuft this big and with spiky leaves. And as soon as you've seen the two side by side, you'll think, oh, I can identify them too. And hogweed is a really good one to know about for the rest of the season, because it's what we call a cut and come back. So you can keep harvesting and it'll keep growing, and then you can harvest it again and it'll grow, and harvest it again and it'll grow. And the thing that you're looking for with it, if I dig down, we'll get new shoots. Let's have a new shoot. So that's a new shoot. Can you see the sort of leaves are smaller? Even newer than that is what I'm looking for. But the best bit hasn't come yet. The best bit happens, we get on the stems, you'll get like a bulbous bit of the stem. Oh, there's a newer shoot. Here we go. A couple of newer shoots and a few nettle stings I've just got. So them are the newer shoots. And what I do is I just cook them, just fry them up in butter with me St George's mushrooms, and they've got quite a unique flavour. They're quite delicious. But on the stem, you start getting this bulbous section of the stem forming, and that's where the flower head comes out of. And when the flower head first emerges, when it's in full bloom, you can see why it's the same family as hemlock, because you've got that sort of burst of small white flowers. But before it bursts like that, when it's still quite closed and compact, it looks like broccoli. And if you pick it, you can use it just as broccoli, but it tastes better than broccoli. So you can make like a hogweed cheese and oven bake it, and it's absolutely delicious. So I'm looking forward to the hogweed florets appearing. They've not quite got here yet, so I'm talking about a lot of things like we're a bit late in spring, but actually a bit early in spring for the hogweed florets. So that's something exciting to look forward to.
And it's a cut and come back, so if
back,
you're using that,
yeah. In fact,
then
if you take the floret, it'll grow another one. And quite often in some areas, the council cut them back. You know, sometimes you get loads of hogweed growing out outside roadside and stuff like that. The council will cut it all back, and that causes it to create a load of new florets right in the middle of summer, when you wouldn't think it would happen anymore, because that season's gone. You know, so like all summer long, if you find ones where it's been cut regular, then you'll have a regular harvest all summer.
Sounds nice.
Yeah. We'll forage some of that, and there's loads of it in Great Lever. Absolutely loads of it. You know, in fact, when it comes into season, there's absolutely no need to buy broccoli or cauliflower, because you can get all the hogweed stuff. You do have to be a little bit careful with the sap, because it does have the same chemical as giant hogweed, so they're photoreactive, but nowhere near in the same quantities. So if it was a dead hot sunny day, I wouldn't go wiping it all over myself. Some people seem to be more reactive to it than others, but it shouldn't ever be a problem for you. It would only be a problem for you if you had a strimmer and you were strimming loads and loads of it and there was sap flying everywhere. Does that make sense? You know, for harvesting, it's fine.
So you can use the florets and the leaves, did you say? You can...
Yeah, those little tiny new shoots. If you look down to the base, you get the little tiny new shoots coming up with the leaves all filled, sort of curled up, folded up like that.
Yeah.
And they're okay. They've got quite a nice flavour to them. But the florets are the best bit by far. Yeah.
So how would you cook them? The leaves.
The leaves. What I usually do is I'll St George's mushrooms, which come out round St George's Day, so that was like, last month. My first harvest of St George's mushrooms, the hogweed will have its first shoots coming up, and I'll often just chuck them all in the pan together. And what I do with them is I put them in a pan, a little bit of water, and boil them first of all. You should always do this with all mushrooms. Is cook it in water first. And it sounds bonkers because people think, well, mushrooms have too much water in it, you've got to get rid of that water. Okay, so you put them in a pan dry. If you just put your heat on, it can start to scorch them before the moisture comes out. So just put just a couple of capfuls, of water in that sort of size, and it just starts to, and just let that boil. That then brings all the moisture out of the mushrooms, so you get this sort of little bath of water that the mushroom's cooking in. Boil it, evaporate all that water off, and when it's just getting dry again, don't burn it, but when it's just getting dry again, then add your butter. And just finish it off in butter, and that's the best way of making all the flavours come out better. And hogweed, I just chuck that in there with it, because the hogweed you do want to thoroughly cook because of the photovoltaic stuff and all that sort. It's just better to have it thoroughly cooked.
Okay.
Anything else we've got here? Oh, we've got loads. I mean, how far have we got? How long are we going for? How far are we going?
Just carry on for a
Just
bit.
carry on for a minute.
Yeah.
Go on then, let's have a walk up the hill, see what else we can see.
Let's pause it.
Yeah. We're filming.
Yeah.
We've only just come about 3 paces. We've got something else to look at here. So this is something called ribwort plantain. Ribwort plantain. So if I get the leaf, if you just pick one of those, Jeannette,
Yeah.
rather than me pick it and touch it and pass it to you, I'll just show the camera this as well. We've got a leaf, long leaf shape like that. There is, oh look at that, how good is that? I was just going to say there is 2 types of ribwort plantain, but we've got both types like pretty much side by side. We've got the long leaf, there we go, these 2. We've got the long thin type and the rounded type. They both have exactly the same properties and all that sort of stuff, it's just a different leaf shape. Sometimes the leaf is much more round than that, and these ones are very long and thin.
Can't really see it on the camera.
Can you not?
It needs a background or something.
Like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the back of the leaf, if you look at the back of the underside of the leaf, Jeannette, it's got like loads of ribs, really distinct, prominent ribs.
Is that why it's called ribwort?
Ribwort, yeah. If I was to break the leaf very carefully, but not break the ribs and pull it apart, sometimes, it's not doing it now, but anyway, sometimes you get like a little strand in between, almost like guitar strings. You know, that's how prominent the ribs are. Okay, so that's the identifier for it. The flower head, these are the flower heads. These long stems with these on top. You'll see these loads all over the place in grasslands and stuff. These are one of the main causes of hay fever. They're a really strong contributor to a lot of people's hay fever. And the interesting thing is the leaves contain a compound which is anti-allergenic. So you can put them in a salad, but they're a bit bitter, they're not very tasty. But what I do with them is I take a load of them home, loads and loads of them, I dry them all out. They then go into, I can just crush them into a powder. So I put them into a powder, put them into a pot. Into that pot I put some alcohol, you know, like a brandy or something like that, some strong alcohol, and let it soak for 6 weeks, and then strain it. And the liquid you've got left with is a tincture. It's drawn all the goodies out of the leaves, and you can have a little bit of it, and it's anti-allergenic. So if you've got hay fever, you have a little shot of that, and it can help you to combat the hay fever. But the real mad thing is the flower head. Can you see the flower head there? You know, the government keeps telling us to like be alert. We've got to go out, you know, we've got to sort of start to ease lockdown restrictions, but be alert. And you think, what does be alert mean? Be alert at what? I can't see the virus. Oh, can you? Is that a coronavirus? Looks like a coronavirus, doesn't it? Obviously it's not. But look at it. It really looks like, you know those pictures you see of coronavirus?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what is mad about these, if we find some a bit away from the side of the path where dogs are definitely not weeding or anything like that, is if you pick one of them and eat that flower head and just chew it up and eat it, you've got to tell me what it tastes like. So see if we can find one and you can have a taste sample, because they taste like something they shouldn't taste of, that no flower or plant should taste of.
Is it horrible?
No, it's not horrible. No, it's not unpleasant.
Will it make me hay fever worse?
No, it won't, no. That's if you sniff it.
Shall I pause it?
Yeah, it can do. Yeah.
Trees in there.
Yeah, we'll do that. So we'll just walk along slowly, shall we, and talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But actually walking it countryside.
Are you going to record?
I'm
Oh, you're recording. You're recording. So say that again, Jeannette.
I was just saying about the health. Obviously, we know about you know, walking's good for us and stuff, but walking, it's good for your well-being. The greenery's good for your well-being.
Yeah.
But there's other things as well that I've heard you mention about, like the different chemicals that you get from plants and trees that are also.
Yeah. There's loads of research into mental health, well-being, and being in the great outdoors. So just obviously being outside is good for you because you're getting all the fresh air and stuff. But you know, you sort of think, what is it? What does it mean, that fresh air? You know, like we breathe oxygen, and we need oxygen, and we breathe out carbon dioxide. So what sort of the sort of things that happen? There's loads of different bacteria and stuff like that. So after it rains, you know, you get a smell after rain. People always say they like the smell after the rain. And what happens basically is loads of ground level bacteria in the soils becomes airborne. When it rains, you kind of think that the rain would dampen everything down, wouldn't you? But it doesn't. It lifts everything up. It lifts the down pressure of air. All those particles of water coming down cause an up pressure of air in between the water droplets. That's why mushrooms come out in autumn, because it rains more, so all the rain causes an updraft of air, causes all the spores to get airborne. If anybody gets autumn hay fever, it's probably due to mushroom spores rather than plant pollen, which I do, typical. What happens in the rain is all that bacteria on the floor gets a bit moist, gets in with moisture droplets that are evaporating. The updraft of air causes all the bacteria to rise, so you're literally breathing bacteria. But it's good for you. It's good bacteria, and it's bacteria that helps your balances and all that sort of stuff. So there's all that, which is far better when you're in a natural environment than on the tarmac, because on the tarmac the bacteria is not good for you, obviously. Just being under the trees, you know, all this stuff about forest therapy, Japanese idea of forest therapy, forest bathing. So you get near the trees, and it's just, I can't do the explanation justice really, but it's been studied. It's an actual fact. It's not just dreamt up. It's good for your mental health, well-being, all them sort of things. It kind of restores you a little bit. Feeling connected with nature is a really important thing, I think, in our lives. We've become so disconnected with nature. And you know, I've gone through a lot of thinking of like, what does it mean? When people talk about reconnecting, why do we need to reconnect? Well, basically, essentially, we have been evolved over hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. We've evolved to be creatures in nature, not creatures on tarmac. So it's a little surprise, isn't it, that it's good for you to go back to nature and understand it, and understanding all the plants around you and stuff. I mean, I wasn't even going to mention this one, but look, this is a plant called fireweed, or rosebay willow herb. Have you heard of rosebay willow herb?
No.
That grows, that's prolific. It grows in loads of places. Say like if you get a derelict building site, that's one of the first things to pop up.
Ah, yeah.
And you get loads of it all over the derelict building site, and it just looks like a weed, and it is a weed. But what is a weed? It's a plant in it, and that's got medicinal properties and whatever. You know, rosebay willow herb, called willow because it looks like the leaves of a willow tree, but it's nothing to do with the willow tree. And if you can kind of look round and understand, so you go out on a walk, and 1 minute you've just got loads of overgrowth, you know, like all this, what use is all that? Why can't we put a kids' playground here? Oh, hang on a minute. So what we've got here, we've got some hemlock, that's interesting stuff, and we've got rosebay willow herb, we've got some ground elder down there, you know, some plants, rivulet plants here, and you know, before you know it, you're kind of going, actually, I understand this, I understand what it's all doing. All these reeds, it must be a bit wet underneath here, so I start to understand what the ground's like. You know, and before you know it, you're kind of feeling like you're connected with it all, and you feel like going out walking more, don't you? You know, you start to miss it, and you start to think, you know what, I could do with going for a walk, and you get out there and walk a bit, and it restores you a bit, and makes you feel a bit more confident.
Yeah,
you know?
And a lot of people have been going out in the local areas because of the COVID, haven't they? Going for walks because they're limited with that what other activities they can do. So it's become the local areas have become more important in a way.
They really have, and
it's surprising what there is actually in your local area.
It's astounding.
I've lived in this area most of my life, but I've sort of discovered a few new bits as well.
You discovered new parts of your area.
Yeah.
And then there's new things in your area that you just never had a clue about. I love going out, and I love getting people to reconnect with nature and all that, but I'm quite guilty of thinking, right, I want to go out, let's go up Rivington, or let's go up Tockholes, up to Roddlesworth, or, you know, up to an ancient woodland somewhere where you get like the rich variety of mushroom species or whatever. So during lockdown, I've been discovering what's on my doorstep a bit more than I would do normally. And it's lovely. It's lovely. And I've noticed loads of people on these footpaths are getting used more, which is a great thing, because the more the footpaths get used, the less chance of losing them. You know, if they don't get used for a period of time, the person who owns that land could put forward a case of saying, I'm not going to maintain that footpath anymore because nobody uses it.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So, yeah.
In a way, it needs more maintenance because there's not as much footfall on it, like, as well.
Yes, yeah.
So all that's from people walking on it, isn't it?
Yeah, this gets a fair little bit of footfall, and the reason it does is because that path that goes through the hospital that we're looking at, this path is a bit of a cut through to get to the back of the hospital, like another part of the back of the hospital. The bit where the hospital workers hang out and smoke quite often. Is just up there, and it's a great foraging spot because we've got a few different trees there, like gorse. So we've got some gorse up there. So we'll have a look at it. Let's have a look at the gorse. There's a nice little tail to fill with the gorse. No use to us as a foraging thing or anything like that, but lady's smock, Cardamine potensis. Okay, so the Latin names. Sometimes I start going into the Latin names, and some people kind of go, oh, what do you need all that for? But they're good to know sometimes because the Latin name gives it a description. So the cardamine is to do with the family that it's in. But potensis means of the meadow. So if something's called something potensis, then it means it's a meadow, species, meadow variety, which makes sense, doesn't it? Lady's smock is a common name for it because the leaves look a bit like a smock. And a smock, sorry mum, a smock is something, so I think there's a bit of a story with this. The traditional thing is that sort of working class women would wear a smock. And this comes out early in spring, and the meadow is where you might find early spring lovers who don't have like a nice bedroom to go to of their own because they're young and they're working class and live with their parents in a crowded house. So it's a nice little tale behind the name of that one.
It's interesting what you were saying about the Latin names though, because I remember you mentioning about it making it more universal. But,
if you're, especially when it comes to
perhaps English isn't the first language, but you might recognise the Latin names if they're familiar with foraging in a different country. Well,
when you get into foraging groups of like experts, they'll quite often insist on Latin names being used. And the reason they insist on Latin names being used, if I'm talking about mushroom species, and I'm talking about mushroom, some particular mushroom to an American expert, then the common name that we're both using might be for a totally different mushroom, because the common names are a bit more regional sometimes. So if we use a Latin name, or in fact it's not even Latin sometimes it's got Greek origin, so it's a scientific name. If we use a scientific name, that means we both absolutely know what we're identifying with. But the other side of that is across Europe, where a lot of our traditional mushroom foraging is very much a European thing rather than an English or American thing. There's loads of languages. There's loads of languages across Europe. So quite often, especially in mushroom foraging, people use a Latin name. So I go out on a group forage, and there's a few people who are local people with a strong Bolton accent. There's a couple of people on there who are Polish or Italian or something like that, who are feeling a bit underconfident because they're out of the comfort zone. I've only been in this country a couple of years, and still not found my feet yet, all that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, it's something they're familiar with, and I suddenly discover that we're speaking the same language, because they know the mushroom like the scientific name, and I can talk about mushrooms and scientific names with somebody, and it's really, really good for them to make that connection and realise that actually something of familiarity from their original country is still got value here. Do you know what I mean? And that's really good for their confidence and everything and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, Latin. So potensis is of the meadow. Another one is sylvestris. Scots pine is called Pinus sylvestris. There's a few flowers called something sylvestris, and sylvestris means of the forest. So potensis is of the meadow and sylvestris is of the forest. So that's a nice little one. Yeah.
I'll see if I can remember it.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I got them.
Are you filming?
Yeah.
So I've just pointed out all this.
If you brushed it against it, it wouldn't do anything.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. This is all the water droplet hemlock.
Into.
Yeah, you have to ingest it. You have to ingest it. So I handled it before. I'm not, you know, I was fine. I can handle it. You have to actually ingest it. But yeah, big tufts of this water droplet hemlock. Big tuft over there, big tuft here, big tuft here, all the way down the riverbank. Often grows up and down riverbank. Can you hear the birds? Oh, we had loads and loads of birds this afternoon.
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
That's a really important thing for well-being, is bird song. You know how much bird song you can hear. Quite often people can't even hear it. Listen to them again. Quite often people can't hear bird song from their house. We live in such sort of built-up areas that there's no bird song to be heard from your house, and it's a really important thing. I know during the sort of when I was at school during the 80s, there was a big emphasis on standard of living being measured. So people would have the standard of living measured based on the belongings that you have and the goods that you accumulate, whether you've got a TV, a washing machine, stuff like that, you know. But a couple of decades ago, so during the 90s and onwards a bit, the government then changed, and one of the things they brought in was measuring quality of life, or quality of living. So rather than the standard, it's the quality. So you can have as many TVs as you want, it doesn't necessarily give you any quality, does it? You know. And one of the measures of your quality of life was how much birdsong you can hear from your door. And I think that's a fantastic measure of the sort of place that you live and the quality of life you've got. And we don't all, unfortunately, live in a place where we can hear loads of birdsong. So the rewilding of places like that railway path and tree growing and stuff isn't just important for the wildlife, it's important for the humans that live around them, isn't it? You know, because you get the birds and you get the birdsong and people start to notice it and all that sort of stuff, you know. And a little short walk from the front door to somewhere like this, and look at it, you know, could be anywhere, couldn't we?
Yeah. Amazing, really.
I do, you alright?
All right.
Hello. Hello. I can't stroke you. I might have coronavirus and pass it on to someone.
I think, you know, since we have had lockdown, one of the things there's not been as many cars being used.
Yeah.
And I think you can hear the birds more.
Yeah, you can.
You know, I've noticed that.
Because there's a bit of a combination of things going on. So one of the things that happened during the start of lockdown is, yeah, people use cars less and stuff. I think people notice the birdsong a bit more. So sometimes it's not necessarily about there being more birdsong, it's just about noticing it, and it's because lockdown's caused us all to just go calm, slow down, have a pause, have a break, just stop what you're doing. And because of that, we might just sort of spend a little bit more time outside in the back garden and places like that if you've got one. And combine that with the lack of the noise pollution from the roads. And I noticed quite a few people saying, well, there's miles more birds than there's been in previous years. And I'm sort of thinking, no, it takes more than 1 month or a few weeks for the bird populations to increase. That would take a few years. What you've done though, you've noticed it. Do you know, and everybody's noticed it a lot more. You know, I'm sure the wildlife this year will benefit from the lockdown, but the populations will be noticeable next year and so on, won't they? But yeah, definitely people noticing it more, which can't be a bad thing.
Because normally you just hear, you know, you hear a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
You know, I could run that over it.
Yeah.
And someone said about the birds being less stressed because there's less traffic noise.
More than likely, yeah. Traffic noise must have a massive stressful effect on wildlife. The other thing that affects the birds a lot is the light pollution. And obviously that's not changed, the light pollution's not changed. You know, like the street lamps and all that sort of stuff, that massively affects birds and bird populations. But yeah, less stress. I mean, I find it less stressful as a cyclist when I'm out on the road. So I'm sure the wildlife finds it less stressful as well. You know. Let's go and have a look at the gorse that I promised. Okay, so we've stopped here to look at the gorse bush. You see gorse all over the place, like on the motorway verges and all that sort of stuff. And quite often it's just green. But when it comes into flower, you get this beautiful yellow, and it's a really particular beautiful shade of yellow as well. And when it comes out into flower, it's lovely. It flowers throughout the year, it's never not flowering. So one bush will only flower at certain times, but like if you go for a drive on the motorways, you'll see some gorse in flower somewhere, because it's always in flower somewhere. Yeah.
Right.
So there's a bit of an old saying with gorse that's quite lovely, and that is, gorse stops flowering when kisses go out of fashion. In other words, it never stops flowering. And there's a few uses of gorse. I mean, you've got to be really careful with it. It's horribly prickly, so it's not something you want to go wading through. If you were in a situation where you need to be a bit of a survivalist and have like wood for burning to keep you warm or to cook on or whatever, gorse is the best wood for burning, believe it or not. So you get the thick sort of chunks from down there, especially on the bigger bushes, dry it out, and it burns strong, it burns hot, and it burns very, very slow. So it lasts for a long time as it's burned, if you know what I mean. So it's a fantastic burning wood, but I don't recommend you just go chopping it down and burning it, because there's not enough of it in one bush to warrant just going harvesting it for that purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if you ever see somewhere where the
I thought I'd pressed it by accident, but
it's still filming. If you ever see somewhere where they're clearing a lot of gorse and you've got a log burner, you know, that's the thing to go and collect. The leaves, the flowers are edible. So you can pick the little flowers, and yeah, I love going out on forages and just tasting things, picking and tasting. I get used to picking and taste, but I don't want to be, you know, I might need to clean my hands and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit of a pain, isn't it? So if I'm collecting these for harvesting, I'll give my hands a gel wash first and then collect. Do you know what I mean? But the taste of peas, so it just has a little pea flavour to it. But they're really pretty in a salad. If you just put sprinkling them over the top of the salad, just a pretty little addition to a salad.
I feel like tasting one.
Yeah, well, if you've got clean hands, just pick one and taste it, because it'll be absolutely fine, you know. It's just that thing of having clean hands. I've been picking a few things up, so. You get like a pea flavour.
Yeah.
Yeah, pea flavour.
Nice
now,
that.
If you see they're kind of going brown, so this was much more yellow a few weeks ago, but it's just going off now. So the flavour might not be as good. You might start to get the bitter flavours coming through, because everything has bitter flavours.
Really nice, actually.
Do you like it? Yeah. It's funny actually when you talk about the bitter flavours. There's lots and lots of different types of bitter flavours. And lots of things out in nature have bitter flavours in them, and sometimes those bitter flavours are stronger, sometimes they're not. But the bitter flavours are different to all of us. We've all got different taste palettes, and some people prefer the bitter flavours, some people really dislike the bitter flavours, depending on which bitter it is. So it's always interesting to see what people like and people dislike, you know.
Yeah, that's
and imagine
good.
that, just a few of them sprinkled over the top of the salad. It's just a nice little funky sort of topping to a salad, you know, which is very nice. Okay, I'm just wondering what to video next, because I'm conscious of the fact this video might be getting quite long. I don't want to bore anybody.
Well, we can always maybe just carry on.
Yeah.
Because we can always edit it. You can always do it as two.
Yeah. So I've just stopped here because it's a lovely view behind us, isn't it? So we've got a great lever over there. Can you see all? I don't know if you can see all the houses and what have you of the Altus estate. Just behind the camera, if camera person turns around and swings it and has a look at the hospital. There we go. So we're just at the back of the hospital here. So what I've got is behind us over there, all the white blossom on that tree.
Just zoom in on it.
Hawthorn. So,
oops, I've zoomed in too much. Oh yeah, there we go.
Have you got it?
Yeah.
So we've got hawthorn. It's a beautiful white blossom. A bit later in spring, when the blossom's finished, it's red berries. But that's the leaf shape of the hawthorn. Many people know what the hawthorn looks like. And hawthorn is entirely edible. The berries are edible, the leaves are edible, the flowers are edible. I've not touched that bit there. So the leaves and the flowers. A flower sandwiched between two leaves. Traditional Lancashire sort of name for it was cheese and biscuits. Because, like, say, working class kids who were playing out and a bit hungry because they've not eaten an awful lot because everybody was poor and all that sort of stuff, might eat some of that just to, you know, get you by. And there's a chemical in it that is a bit reminiscent of some of the chemicals in cheese and biscuits. And it's a bit of a funny one because not everyone can taste it, and I can't taste it at all. I'm just sort of going, I'm not particularly getting any nice flavours out of that, but sometimes people munch on it and they go, oh yeah, there is something in that that reminds me of a cheese and biscuity thing. But it's interesting, isn't it, cheese and biscuits?
There's someone just behind you's coming up.
The berries made into a sauce, and cooked, which is quite useful. Alright.
Thanks.
Yeah, the berries can be made. I've made like I've made a syrup out of the berries, you know, like a cordial, which is okay. That's not a bad flavour. It's not. It's quite a dark flavour to me. A friend of mine makes like a Chinese cooking sauce, and they call it hoisin sauce. You know, like hoisin sauce?
Yeah.
But ho as in hawthorn, hoisin sauce.
Right.
and that's quite tasty. Quite a thick sauce to make out of that. But
So,
yeah, hawthorn.
what do you use the flowers for? They're just, you can just eat them.
You can eat them. I wouldn't say that it's on the foragers list of prize things to go foraging for at all, but it's just interesting. You know, there's lots of interesting things about foraging, rather than being like something you'd choose to replace all your supermarket food with.
Yeah. I don't think we'll be doing that, will we?
No, not quite. But it's surprising how much you can get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's surprising you can get some real treats. So the hogweed florets, St George's mushrooms, stuff like that. I can cook a meal that's like better than the supermarket. You know what I mean?
It's probably very healthy, you know, and full of nutrients.
Yeah.
So when does it get the berries on?
What happens is in early spring, early to mid spring like this, you get all the blossom.
Yeah.
The blossom, there's all the flowers that attract the bees and the pollinators. They come along and they pollinate. Once all the trees have been pollinated, the flowers then sort of wither away, and then it then produces a berry. Same as any other plant that has leaves and then berries. Is the flowers and the berries. The flowers act as the pollinators in order for it to create the berries. And make those berries fertile. And I would have thought, I'm not looking around, and some of them that's full of white blossom. There's one over there that's started to lose its blossom. It's only up near the top. So I would have thought it's just starting to lose its blossom now. And within a few weeks they'll start to produce the berries, and then by midsummer, the berry, and late summer especially, the berries will be full ripe. Berries are usually more of an end of summer and autumn foraging thing, and the berries, when we get into berry season, that's fantastic because there's some loads of it. Just in this area, in these fields over the back of the Orlick's estate, between the Orlick's estate and the hospital, there's loads and loads of sloe bushes. You know, sloe berries, blackthorn is the tree, and it creates these berries called sloe berries, and you can make sloe gin with it, which is a really nice thing. Yeah, that'll do us, I think.
And then
Now we're filming, so we're still in this location, but I've just spotted something else just interesting value, and that is that. So do you recognise that, Jeannette?
Horsetail, isn't it?
Yeah,
But they
mace
say it's
tails,
a gardening nightmare because it has really long roots, doesn't
It does,
So
yeah, mace tails. Hello, yeah, with a tail.
I've got a friend joining
Yeah.
us here. Hello.
hello.
So these
Yeah,
mace
right.
tails are really interesting because they're kind of they're a real ancient plant. They're massively, you know, so they're from a time in prehistory, before a lot of the things that you see growing around you now and living around you now. They've been around for a long time, and they're a bit of a duck-billed platypus of the plant and fungi world. So you know, duck-billed platypuses are famous because they lay eggs and have beaks like a bird, but they're a mammal and have fur. So you think, well, what's that? What's going on there? It's a bit of a crossover species almost. So this is a crossover between plants and fungi, because earlier in spring they produce a seed head, but it's not a seed head, it's a spore head. And if you tap it, loads of dust comes out and they produce spores just like a mushroom produces spores, but it's a plant. So
Wow.
It's really weird. It's really weird. But
Interesting.
interesting thing is that some people call it a Lego plant, because I don't know if you can get it on the video, but can you see these little joins? Every so often there's a join. And what I do, if I'm careful, I can pull it apart and it just pops at the join. I could take a piece out. I can drop that piece and put them two pieces back together. Now if I hadn't picked that and it was still growing and I left that like that, they'd rejoin and carry on growing. So I could take out as many sections as I want and then rejoin it. I can actually add sections from another part, from another plant. I can add sections in and make it taller, and it'll rejoin and carry on growing. So some people call it the Lego plant. So it's quite interesting. Absolute nightmare if you're a gardener, because it's virtually impossible to get rid of.
It's got lots of medicinal properties.
Medicinal properties, yeah, it has got medicinal properties to it. Lots and lots of medicinal properties to it. It's quite amazing in terms of its claims. I'm always wary of the claims, because some people read the claims and think that's hard and fast rules, and why do we have Big Pharma and all that sort of stuff. Well, we have Big Pharma over there in the hospital because they're doing a blooming good job for us and keeping us all safe and healthy. So I'm always wary of the claims, but sometimes the claims are really interesting in terms of like just health boosts, nutrient boosts, food additives, food boosts, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a nice tale. The Lego plant.
I was also very interested in that.
You're the nurse tails, you see.
Yeah. They always want grass off this side, don't they?
Yeah.
Because of course the grass is always greener, isn't it? Elsewhere. All that grass you've got there, but it's green over here, isn't it? That's just grass. I wonder what they like the most. I know what it'll like.
Can you feed them to him?
Dandelions. Yeah, dandelions are fine. Dandelions are interesting because these are edible, aren't they? These are quite edible and healthy and good for you.
They're big dandelion leaves.
They are big dandelion leaves, yeah. Yeah, they are big dandelion leaves. Dandelion leaves are great in salads. The roots, you can make like a coffee out of the root. But you know the flower heads. So what happens with the dandelion flower head? First of all, you get this tight head, and then it opens up, and you get the dandelion flower, the yellow flower. It then gets pollinated, then it closes up, it turns into the seed head and opens up as a seed head with all the, you know, the round dandelion seed head. The clock, yeah.
Dandelion clock.
Yeah, and this one is gone through its flower head cycle, and as you can see, it's turning into a seed head. Now, if you can get them in that closed phase, but before it turns into the flower, so when the flower is ready for opening, but before it's open, so it's still closed.
Would that be like early on in spring?
Yeah, I mean, they carry on doing it, but early on in spring you get loads of them. So you go into a meadow and pick loads and loads of them, and pickle them, just as the heads like that. And you pickle them, and they taste really nice. Oh. That's a nice little thing to have. But I think you might like this. I think that might be tasty for you.
So the dandelion leaves, I remember my dad picking them and eating them, but he used to pick the young ones. Yes,
young ones are better. Yeah, as always, the younger the leaf, the more succulent it is.
And he used to have them on like a sandwich or something, and he said they helped him to sleep. They're good for helping him to sleep.
Right. Yeah.
As well.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know people that have made coffee out of the roots.
Yes. Yeah.
The dandelion coffee.
Dandelion coffee.
If you like that. I quite like it. I know not.
It's a bit funny as to what is tea and what is coffee. People say you make teas or you make coffees out of it. So basically, if you can bake it and crumble it into a powder, people call it coffee. Nothing like coffee. It's just crumbled like coffee is. And if you make a tea out of something, you use the leaves and infuse the leaves like you do with tea. So they're not actually like coffee and tea. It's just a drink made from it, if you know what I mean. So I wouldn't, you know, if you like to have your coffee hit at 11 o'clock in the morning, when everybody does, like I do, I'm having coffee, not dandelion root, but it's an interesting drink.
Could you have it at night?
And stuff like that, you know.
Could you have it like chamomile tea or something like that?
Possibly, yeah, like a nighttime version of it.
Because I quite like having stuff like that. So.
Yeah, like a herbal
herbal
infusion sort of thing. Yeah.
It likes that dandelion leaf.
Made a new friend.
Yeah.
Now, we've spotted quite a few things and we've not been that far. Basically, this video is going to be quite a long one, but we've recorded almost everything that we've done and most of the walk. So we've hardly gone any distance whatsoever. It's really interesting, isn't it, what you can get and what you can understand right on your doorstep and feel like you're in the middle of nature with birds and trees and rivers and poisonous plants and edible plants and you know, you'd think you'd gone into Dorset, into some wild food forage in Dorset or somewhere, you know, far away, but no, we're in Great Lever.
Yeah.
I reckon that's enough video in that. I reckon we should round up that video now because it's probably long enough.
Yeah.
But it gives people a flavour of flavour, gives people a flavour of what we can get around Great Lever and what we can do in Bolton. Yeah. What we can have.
I think this house is super liking to me.
I know.
I know.
Yeah.
He keeps looking at you.
What a beautiful house, isn't it?
Are you filming it?
Should I film it?
Right, yeah. Just a little add on to this because we were up at the horse and we were feeding the horse. Don't feed it that. That's called ragwort. It's a new species to this country relatively, and it's kind of spread on the railways and stuff, you know, with the trains passing by and blowing the seeds around. And it's poisonous to poisonous to horses. But the horses won't eat it because it don't taste good to them. But the danger the danger is if you if you pick it up and feed it in a handful of other stuff, then it might end up eating it, you know. Yeah. Here comes another. Hey, do you alright? Hello. So the danger for farmers is, you know, when they cut all the meadow and gather it all and turn it into silage, you know, sort of dry it basically and keep it for the winter, so it's horse food for the winter, and horses can eat the silage during the winter. Is once it's dried and mixed in with all the hay, the horses won't detect the flavour, so horses can get poisoned. But if I just pick a handful of dot leaves or dandelion like I had, which is nice and tasty for it, and that's in the middle of that handful, you might eat it, and that's not good. So I'm not going to give you that because you don't want that. Have you come for more than that?
I think this house has taken a liking to us, following us.
Did you know that if you blow on its nostrils, they like it?
Do they?
That's how they communicate with each other, is they kind of put the noses together and just breathe on each other like that.
Oh.
And if you do it, then it kind of has a calming effect on the horse.
I didn't know
that. Yeah. Did you hear it blow then?
Yeah. Oh.
You're a beauty, aren't you? Yeah.